I am on my last page of this big sketchbook. 96 pages. I know, it's taken me a while, and I've shared with you several things out of it, 6 tips, and then how a class started by working in my sketchbook, and now I'm going to share the last page with you. So let's pick up where we left off. In 6 tips, I pretty much went through this whole sketchbook, but I know there's pages back here that you have not seen. Leaves from my yard. This was done with forest gray, schminky forest gray. It's all one color. Isn't that beautiful how it just goes from light to dark? I did several pinks in here from Art to Basic. This was the American Spirit pinks. And then I have the European Essence pinks from Art to Basic. Great comparison, and I love all the ranges. This was one I did with pink clay, playing with different colors. We did palette play together. Here's a part of my Fox and Fern class. And I had bought some Durachrome and some iridescent paints from Daniel Smith. And I wanted to see what they would do over different colors. And look at this, where it is the dark color and the light color. Isn't that interesting how they look like 2 different colors? I thought that was really neat. And then just trying them over here to see if I could get the different shines of them. And then I bought a little owl. I was trying to figure out how to do his texture on here. Look how cute he is. And for this one, I used this as inspiration. It's from Art Journaling Winter 2023. And so I wanted to try just the different colors and the different kind of textures. And I really enjoy that. I'm gonna do more of that in my new sketchbook. And then I shared my 5 favorite colors from August 2023. And today I went for a walk and found a little bitty leaf and some acorns. Look how cute that is. I like them that they're all kind of spindly. And I've already drawn it on my back page, so it is drawn like that. But what I want to do with this leaf is pick some of my favorite colors here to just kind of explore so you can see them in action besides just in the swatching here. I really like the really dark colors. I want to really do the leaf in raw sienna and this Artemis because I love that kind of brown color. I might touch a little bit of the rare earth green into it, but I love how that's separating with the Artemis in it. And then for the acorns, I'm gonna go a little more pink clay, I think. Pink clay and this Hematite Violet Genuine are really beautiful colors. I like that it granulates there. This one's kind of softer, but I get the color separation. So let's try that. So Artemis and raw sienna is my first mix. Gonna be using my little palette here. So I'm getting Artemis out first. I want to make sure I have plenty of that mixed with the raw sienna. And I want the color to change to that kind of brown that it had. That was really pretty. I'm going to add some of that rare green earth just to add a hint of green. Oh yeah, look at that color. Let's see what that does. I started this sketchbook in May 2022. I never thought I would finish it, you guys. This was my first handmade sketchbook and my first real watercolor sketchbook. And I'm just really happy that it's finished. I've learned a lot, as you saw, as I shared the book with you. I just looked at it as constant practice for myself. And even though I went and got leaves a lot of times, it was something that I could do that would get me working in my sketchbook. The key is to find something that you love, so on those days when you don't know what to create, you have something in your mind already. And that's what leaves are to me. I know you're like, Kelly, really? Another leaf? Yes, another leaf. You can see now that I'm getting the different colors. I'm going to splatter that. Just splash it with some water. This is going to be pretty when it dries. Even on my palette, it's separating just a little bit. And then I'll mix a whole nother mix for that one. I don't like to use the same mix. By mixing separate puddles, you get two little experiences, and I like that, especially with granulating colors like this. The Artemis is a granulating, and so is the Rare Green Earth. The Raw Sienna is not. Pick a little bit of that up. Okay, let's mix some more. This time I want a little more Artemis and less green because the green's really showing up there. And Raw Sienna. So I'm using 3 different brands of paint. The Raw Sienna is the Van Gogh paint. The Rare Green Earth is Daniel Smith, and the Artemis is Da Vinci. Now I need to add more purple to this, more of the Artemis. Okay, that looks nice. You guys seeing all the lovely color there? This one's a little deeper. And add just a touch more water. I want to make sure that it gets separating. There we go. That's better. It's moving a little better. I was an acrylic painter for many decades and I always forget to add a lot of water in my watercolors. So I don't get the movement that I expect sometimes, and that's because acrylics you don't add a lot of water. I'm trying to train myself to do better. Loving the value of this. I'm going to splash that one a little bit more over there. How many of you have started splashing? I find it so fun. And I really prefer when I can just whip it on there like with my hands instead of the brush. Because the brush, I find that I'm just too organized with it and I don't get the randomness that I like. I hope you can see the richness of this showing up on camera. It's just really pretty. I've got this weird green coming out over there. Okay, the acorns, I wanted to do pink clay. Pink clay is my original color with Art to Basic. I was featured on the American Spirit Pinks. Wanted to touch a little bit of raw sienna into that. There we go. And I'm going to let that kind of bleed in. Whenever you say bleed, it just kind of runs in because I'm going to touch it. I'm going to just touch that in. There we go. Invite the color in. I'm going to take just a little bit of sepia. And in the darker area of the acorn, I'm just going to put little dots. That's all I'm doing. And then with the sepia, I'm going to mix sepia and Artemis. Let's see what that does. I think that'll be a nice color for the stem. Got a beautiful richness up there. I've blotted my brush. I've rinsed it in water, blotted it on my paper towel, and now I'm just going to fill in the rest of the stick or the stem here with water. So what that's doing is it's allowing the wet paint to come on over. Got a little puddle there. So I'm waiting for that to dry so that I can do inside the cap of the acorn there, really dark. And then we have to decide on a color for the acorn. Let's see what raw sienna does, and just a touch of Artemis. I want it more on the yellow side, so that means more raw sienna. I touch a little bit of green earth in there, rare green earth. Okay, that's good. It kind of muddied it up just a little bit. I'm just kind of dotting. If you watch, I just dot a little bit there. That'll create a little bit of shadow. I like that color. I'm going to add a little bit of that into the stem. I'm going to show you a quick way to do shadows. So let me move this out of the way here for a minute while that dries. And this is just a piece of paper here. But can you see the shadows? Let me bring you closer. Now watch the shadows. Do you see the shadow on the paper here? And look at the stick. When you are doing something like this bottom line here is the shadow. So that means the stick goes upward when you see spaces between the stick here and the shadow here. And you can see as it goes up this way, the lines kind of close. And that's because this nut part, or the nut cap, is actually on the ground and the stick is actually sticking up. So here's the ground, it's actually like that. So the nut down here is heavier and it's causing the stick to go up. So that's a fun way to look at your shadows. And you can see here the stick, the stem that goes from this leaf to the branch here, it is curved upward. So you have the little shadow down here on the paper. Can you see that? And that happens with the leaves too. As all the leaves are kind of standing up, these are really gnarly and dried. So I'm getting a lot of different shadows. I've used mine when they were straighter, but you can see the shadow underneath here. I mean, that's the shadow of the leaf being lifted up. You can see out back here, see the shadow right in there on the paper, right down there. So that is because that leaf is up. So anytime the shadow is next to the leaf or coming out just a little bit here, that means that it's laying down flat. Let me show you another leaf here. I've got two more. Of course I have leaves. So let's see. Let me try to find a view for you. Let me see if I can move my light. There we go. So now you can see that the stick here is laying flat, and then it has this little part that's because of the leaf stems under it. So it's lifting it up just a little bit here. And then look what it's doing to this part and the leaf shadow underneath here. And that's because this leaf is lifted up like this to the light. So look at the bright light of this side of my hand and look at the darkness on the back side. Do you see that? So it's brighter here and darker back here. So it's brighter on this front side and it's casting the shadow down onto the paper. The same with these. They're all lifted up and so they're casting the shadow on the opposite side. Whenever I'm working on shadows, I like to have my specimen right in front of me. So I usually lay it on the table in front of me and watch the way the light hits it. That way I'm able to see the shadows and the darkness. And make sure that it's the same way that yours is laid out. You know, I don't want it askew like that because that's going to give me different shadows. So my branch here is pretty straight up and down, so that's the way I'm laid in front there. I always use a little finer brush. So here I'm using my XL brush. It's more of a really thick liner brush. Think of it that way, but look at the point that this thing has. This is my favorite brush. I use this all the time. I used it in acrylics and now I'm using it in watercolors. But if you have a liner brush or something with a really nice point, that's what you want to use for your shadow. You don't want something real heavy like this brush because you're not going to be able to get the fine lines of like the stem here and this little branch. So let me go back. Let's look for a shadow color here. I think we're going to use the hematite and buff titanium. That's kind of a different color, and I usually like to make my shadows different than what I have here. It just lets them stand out a bit more, and I like my shadows to really command your attention, kind of. So let's dig up some hematite here. For my shadows too, I usually like them more watery because I want them to be lighter than what I have here. And then buff titanium. And the buff is just going to really dull this down. I need more water. So you can see that is a little too heavy because it would compete with that. Don't want it competing, so that means more water. That's better. See, the lighter wash here is letting it kind of dissipate a little bit more than that. I usually like to start with the sticks. I don't know why, the branches, but I know that it was tighter here and I got too much water on my brush. And you try to mimic. If you have a little curve, then you try to curve your branch. See how soft it is? It's softer in value than the actual stick. I need to blot that one. A little too heavy. There we go. So that means a little more water on my brush. Now this branch, this leaf right here is sticking up. So it shows more of this, but as it goes towards the center here, it goes back down. To me, the shadows add so much interest to your drawings. And not every leaf part has a shadow either, because remember, they can be laying flat on the ground and then they wouldn't really have one. Now I need to do the darkness in there. For that, I think I'm just going to use hematite and a little bit of the Artemis. That looks nice. With that same shadow, I'm going to shadow the acorn. There is a stick, so the two acorn caps are connected with the little stick there. And remember, when that was wet, it kind of ran down the stick. So now I'm just making it a little deeper in here so that we understand that that's where that stick is. I'm going to touch a little bit of sepia into that mix. And just add a little bit more little shading on the cap. Got it a little heavy. Okay. Now for the acorn, I want it to have a little highlight. So what I'm going to do is, with this brush, I'm going to just take the water off. I'm going to lay it down, just the water, onto my piece. And then I'm going to blot. See how it lifted the little highlight there? I like to lift highlights that way. I'm going to do the same on the little cap over here, just putting a couple drops. And I'm looking on my stem, do I have anywhere that's kind of heavy? Right here is kind of heavy. So there are my leaves. Do you notice the shadows? Let me see if I can get them all in this way. So now you can see that all the shadows kind of point down. You see that little acorn highlight now, and you can see where the dark stem connects to the nuts. And look at the granulation of those paints. Isn't it amazing here that you see some pink, you see some green, you see some blues, here you see some dark blues. Here you see a lot of the green, and that's Artemis. I just love that color. So thank you so much for helping me finish my sketchbook. I started this in May 2022, and then I finished August 2023. 96 pages. And I was thrilled to share the last page with you. If you were inspired by today's content, please like, comment, or subscribe. It will help my channel grow. As always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you being here.